The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room in the known universe. It floated in the center of a space station called Nexus Prime, far from any star system. Here, the 12 most powerful species in the galaxy met to discuss trade, war, and peace. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. The walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of the room. Today, the crystals were dark red, the color of fear. High. Counselor Zithan sat in the central chair, his silver scales catching the dim light. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His 6 eyes had watched empires rise and fall. He had seen wars that burned entire star systems to ash. But in all his 3,000 years, he had never felt fear like this. The holographic display in the center of the room showed a fleet of warships. 200 vessels, each one bristling with weapons. At the center of the formation sat 12 massive ships, each one large enough to crack a planet in half. These were the pride of the Vexery Empire. "They cannot be serious," said Counselor Narum, a being made of living smoke that shifted and swirled as he spoke. "The humans are children. They only discovered faster than light travel 40 years ago." Ambassador Cathra stepped forward. She was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "I have confirmed the intelligence 3 times, Counselor. The Vexery Empire has declared war on Earth. Their fleet will arrive in the Sol system in 72 hours. The room erupted in noise. Representatives from a dozen species all spoke at once. Some were angry. Some were confused. Many were simply shocked. Zithan raised one clawed hand and silence fell. "Why?" he asked simply. "The humans have nothing the Vexery want. Their technology is basic. Their military is small. What possible reason could there be for this attack?" Cathra pulled up another display. It showed a Vexery commander, his insect-like face filling the screen. Supreme Commander Vexthel released this statement 6 hours ago. The recording began to play. The Vexery spoke in his harsh, clicking language, but the translation appeared below. "The human species has refused to pay tribute to the Vexery Empire. They have rejected our generous offer of protection. They have insulted our ambassadors and mocked our traditions. For these crimes, they will be destroyed. Their planet will be broken. Their species will be erased from history. Let this be a lesson to all who would defy Vexery power." The recording ended. Counselor Narum made a sound that might have been laughter. "They refused to pay tribute? The humans told the Vexery no?" "It appears so," Cathra said. "Then they are fools as well as children." On Earth, the mood was very different. Admiral Jack Morrison stood in the command center of United Nations Space Command. The facility was built deep inside a mountain in Colorado, protected by a mile of solid rock. Screens covered every wall, showing data from satellites and ships across the solar system. Jack was 63 years old. His hair had gone gray years ago, and his face was lined with the weight of command. He had joined the Navy as a young man, back when humanity still fought its wars on the surface of a single planet. He had watched his species reach for the stars. He had hoped they would find friends out there. Instead, they had found the Vexery. "Sir, the ambassador has confirmed it," said Commander Lisa Chun. She was young, barely 30, but she was the best tactical officer Jack had ever worked with. "The Vexery fleet is on its way. They're not bluffing." Jack nodded slowly. He had known this day might come. From the moment humanity made first contact with alien life, he had known that the universe was not a friendly place. There were predators out there, species that took what they wanted and destroyed anyone who stood in their way. "How many ships do we have?" he asked. Lisa pulled up the data. 47 combat vessels, sir. Another 30 support ships. The Vexery have 200 warships, including planet crackers. Odds? 0, sir. Our ships are smaller, slower, and less armed. Our shields are weaker. Our weapons have shorter range. By every measure, we should lose. Jack turned to look at her. There was no fear in his eyes. Should? Lisa allowed herself a small smile. The Vexery have never fought humans before, sir. They don't know what we're capable of. Jack walked to the main display. It showed Earth, blue and green and beautiful, hanging in the blackness of space. 7 billion people lived on that planet. They were teachers and farmers, doctors and artists, children and grandparents. They had dreams and hopes and fears. And in 72 hours, an alien fleet would arrive to kill them all. Contact the president, Jack said. Contact every world leader. Tell them we're activating Protocol Omega. Lisa's eyes widened. Sir, Protocol Omega has never been tested. We don't even know if it will work. Then I guess we'll find out. Jack turned to face his staff. The Vexery think we're easy prey. They think we'll run or surrender. They're wrong. Humanity didn't crawl out of caves and cross oceans and reach the stars just to die at the hands of some bug-eyed bullies. We're going to fight. And we're going to win. How, sir? Someone asked from the back of the room. Jack smiled. It was not a nice smile. The Vexery made one mistake. They gave us 72 hours to prepare. In human history, we've started and ended wars in less time. We've built armies from nothing. We've turned farmers into soldiers and factories into arsenals. We've done the impossible, again and again, because we had no other choice. He pointed at the screen. Get me every ship in the solar system. Military, civilian, I don't care. Get me every weapon, every missile, every rock we can throw. Call up every reserve, every veteran, everyone who can hold a gun or fly a ship. We have 3 days to build the largest fleet in human history. Lisa stared at him. That's insane, sir. Yes, Jack agreed. It is. But so is attacking Earth. The Vexery wanted a war. We're going to give them one they'll never forget. Across the planet, the message went out. It was broadcast on every channel, in every language. The president spoke first, then leaders from every nation. They told the truth. An alien fleet was coming to destroy them. There was nowhere to run. The only choice was to fight. And humanity answered. In shipyards from Shanghai to Seattle, workers began 12-hour shifts. In military bases around the world, soldiers reported for duty. In universities and laboratories, scientists dropped their research and focused on one question. How do we survive? Old enemies became allies. Old arguments were forgotten. For the first time in human history, the entire species was united by a single purpose. They were going to war, and they were going to win, or they were going to die trying. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size gathered around screens to watch the coming destruction. In bars and homes, in palaces and slums, the story was the same. The mighty Vexery Empire was about to crush the young human species. It would be quick. It would be brutal. It would be over in hours. On the space station Nexus Prime, a Dronari merchant named Gorth sat in his favorite drinking spot. He was short and round, with skin like old leather and 3 eyes that had seen too much of the universe. He sipped his fermented nectar and shook his head sadly. A pity, he said to no one in particular. I liked the humans. Strange creatures, but creative. They made good art, good music too. A Tholian trader next to him clicked his mandibles in agreement. I sold them engine parts last year. They paid on time and never complained about the price. Now they'll be dust. Perhaps some will escape, Gorth suggested. The council offered to take refugees. The humans refused. Gorth nearly choked on his drink. They refused? Are they insane? Apparently, their admiral said, and I quote, that humanity would rather die standing than live kneeling. Gorth stared at his drink for a long moment. Then he ordered another. On Earth, the transformation was happening faster than anyone had thought possible. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching his crew work. The ship was one of humanity's newest battle cruisers, built just 2 years ago. It was fast, tough, and carried enough firepower to level a small moon. But against the Vexery fleet, it was still hopelessly outmatched. Daniel was 38 years old, young for a captain but old for a soldier. He had fought in 3 border skirmishes against alien pirates and led the rescue mission to save a colony ship from a meteor storm. His crew trusted him with their lives. Now he would have to earn that trust. "Status report," he said calmly. His first officer, Commander Amy Rodriguez, looked up from her console. She was short and stocky, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her mind was like a computer, able to process tactical data faster than anyone Daniel had ever met. "We received the final orders from command, sir. The fleet is assembling at Rally Point Alpha, behind the moon. We're to join formation within 6 hours. How many ships?" Amy checked her display and blinked in surprise. 3,412 vessels, sir. Daniel turned to stare at her. "That's not possible. We only had 47 warships." "We still do, sir. But the civilian response has been—" She searched for the right word. "Unprecedented?" She put the fleet composition on the main screen. Daniel felt his jaw drop. There were cargo freighters with missile launchers welded to their hulls. Mining ships with their rock-cutting lasers converted into weapons. Passenger liners with their luxurious interiors stripped out and replaced with armor and guns. Research vessels, construction platforms, even private yachts. Every ship that could fly had been transformed into a weapon of war. "The Vexery expected to face 50 ships," Amy said quietly. "They're going to face 3,000. Will it be enough?" Amy hesitated. "I don't know, sir. Our ships are still weaker than theirs. Our weapons are still smaller. But we have numbers now. And we have something else." "What?" She looked at him with fierce pride in her eyes. "We have everything to lose. The Vexery are fighting for pride. We're fighting for our families, our homes, our entire species. That matters." Daniel nodded slowly. "Get me a channel to the crew." Amy opened the communication line. Throughout the ship, speakers crackled to life. "This is the captain speaking. I'm not going to lie to you. In less than 48 hours, we're going to face the most powerful military force in this part of the galaxy. The odds are against us. The smart money says we should run or surrender." He paused, looking around his bridge at the men and women who served under him. "But we're not running. And we're not surrendering. Because we're human. And humans don't give up. We never have. We fought our way out of caves with sticks and stones. We crossed oceans in wooden ships. We put boots on the moon when our computers were weaker than a pocket calculator. And now we're going to fight for our planet." He could see his crew straightening up, their fear being replaced by determination. "The Vexery think we're weak because we're young. They think we're cowards because we're small. They're wrong. And in 48 hours, we're going to teach them just how wrong they are." Defiance out. Across the ship, cheers erupted. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, Dr. Kevin Park was working on something that could change everything. He was 45 years old, thin and tired, with thick glasses and hair that he had forgotten to comb for days. He ran the experimental weapons division at a secret facility in the Nevada desert. For years, his team had been working on a device that everyone said was impossible. They called it the Genesis Array. The power readings are off the charts, said his assistant, a young woman named Monica Adams. If we push it any further, the whole system could overload. Kevin stared at the numbers on his screen. The Genesis array was designed to generate a focused beam of exotic particles that could disable electrical systems across a massive area. In theory, it could shut down an entire fleet. In practice, it had never been tested at full power. We don't have a choice, he said. The fleet needs us. Earth needs us. If we're wrong, we could black out half the planet. Kevin laughed, but there was no humor in it. If we're wrong, there won't be a planet left to black out. Run the calculations again. Triple check everything. We have 36 hours to make this work. Monica nodded and went back to her console. In Moscow, General Natasha Volkov was coordinating the planetary defense grid. She was 60 years old, a veteran of more wars than she cared to remember. Her job was to link every satellite, every ground station, every weapon platform into a single network that could respond to the Vexery attack. It was an impossible task. Different systems used different codes. Different nations had different protocols. Getting them all to work together should have taken months. They did it in 18 hours. And in the small town of Cedar Falls, Iowa, an old man named Frank Cooper kissed his wife goodbye. You don't have to go, she said, tears in her eyes. You're 67 years old. Let the young ones fight. Frank smiled and held her close. I flew fighters for 30 years, Maggie. I know those ships better than anyone. They need pilots, and I can still fly. What about the grandchildren? Frank looked out the window at the bright blue sky. Somewhere up there, an alien fleet was coming to destroy everything he loved. His children, his grandchildren, his home, his planet. I'm doing this for them, he said softly. If we don't stop those bastards up there, there won't be any grandchildren to come home to. He kissed her one more time, picked up his bag, and walked out the door. Across the world, the same scene played out millions of times. Old soldiers and young recruits, scientists and factory workers, people who had never held a weapon, and people who had fought in a dozen wars. They all answered the call, because they were human, and humans never stop fighting for their home. The Vexery fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a swarm of angry wasps. 200 warships, each one painted in the black and gold colors of the Empire. At the center of the formation sat the 12 planet crackers, massive vessels capable of splitting a world in half with a single shot. And at the very heart of the fleet, surrounded by his finest warriors, was the flagship Conqueror's Pride. Supreme Commander Vex still stood on the bridge, his compound eyes taking in every detail on the tactical display. He was tall for a Vexery, nearly 8 feet of armored chitin and muscle. His mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he surveyed his force. Status report. He commanded. His second-in-command, a smaller Vexery named Crix, stepped forward. All ships have arrived safely, Supreme Commander. We are exactly on schedule. The human homeworld lies before us. Excellent. Begin the approach. Broadcast the surrender demand. Crix hesitated. Supreme Commander, there is something strange on the sensors. Vexthal turned, his eyes narrowing. Strange? What do you mean? The readings do not match our intelligence reports. There appear to be anomalies throughout the system. Show me. The main view screen changed to show a tactical map of the solar system. Vexthal stared at it for a long moment, his mandibles clicking in confusion. Where his scouts had reported 50 human ships, there were now thousands. The entire region around the third planet was filled with dots, each one representing a vessel. This is impossible, he said. Our scouts surveyed the system 3 weeks ago. The humans barely had 40 combat ships. I am rechecking the data now, Supreme Commander. Crix worked furiously at his console. The readings are confirmed. There are approximately 3,500 vessels between us and the target planet. 3,000? Vexthal's voice was loud with disbelief. Where did they come from? Another officer spoke up. Supreme Commander, we are receiving detailed scans of the enemy fleet. Most of these vessels are not military ships. They appear to be cargo freighters, mining vessels, civilian transports, civilian ships. Vexthal made a sound that might have been laughter. They are sending cargo ships to fight us. Have these humans lost their minds? They have modified the ships, Supreme Commander. We are detecting weapon systems on vessels that should be unarmed. Vexthal waved a clawed hand dismissively. It does not matter. A freighter with guns is still a freighter. Our warships will cut through them like a blade through water. Continue the approach. Yes, Supreme Commander. On the bridge of the USS Defiance, Captain Daniel Hayes watched the Vexery fleet approaching. The enemy ships moved in perfect formation, each one exactly where it should be. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a predator stalk its prey. They're coming straight at us, Commander Amy Rodriguez reported. No attempt to flank, no scouts ahead. They're confident. Too confident, Daniel replied. They still think we're weak, aren't we? Daniel smiled grimly. Let's find out. Signal the fleet. Execute pattern Delta. The human fleet began to move. Watching from the Vexery flagship, Crix frowned at his sensors. Supreme Commander, the enemy is not forming a defensive line. What are they doing? They are scattering, breaking into small groups and moving in different directions. Vexthal stared at the display. The human fleet, which had been gathered in a single mass, was now spreading out like a cloud of dust. Small groups of ships were moving into the asteroid belt. Others were positioning themselves behind moons and planets. Still others were heading directly toward the Vexery fleet, but in loose, random patterns. What kind of formation is this? Vexthal demanded. This is chaos. Perhaps they are panicking, Supreme Commander. No. Vexthal's voice was thoughtful now. No, there is purpose here. They are not running. They are positioning. He turned to his tactical officer. What do our records say about human military tactics? The officer checked his database. Very little, Supreme Commander. Humans have only been a spacefaring species for 40 years. They have no significant military history beyond their own planet. Then find their planetary history. I want to know how these creatures fight. Several minutes passed while the tactical officer searched the records. When he looked up, his face was pale. Supreme Commander, I have found something disturbing. Report. In their history, humans have fought thousands of wars against each other. They have developed tactics for every situation, every terrain, every advantage and disadvantage. And their most successful strategies. He paused, clearly uncomfortable. Continue. Their most successful strategies involve deception, surprise attacks, and what they call guerrilla warfare. They hide among civilians. They strike from ambush. They use their environment as a weapon. They refuse to face superior forces directly. Vexthal was silent for a moment. Then his mandibles clicked in what might have been concern. They are not panicking. They are setting a trap. Should we halt the advance, Supreme Commander? Pride warred with caution in Vexthal's mind. He had never retreated from a battle. He had conquered 12 worlds and crushed every enemy who stood before him. To turn back now, because of some civilian ships and clever positioning, would shame him before the entire empire. No, he said finally. We continue. Even if they are setting a trap, what can they possibly do against our firepower? Their ships are weak. Their technology is primitive. We will crush them regardless of their tricks. Yes, Supreme Commander. But as the Vexery fleet moved deeper into the solar system, things began to go wrong. First, it was small things. A sensor glitch here, a communication delay there. Then a scout ship disappeared, destroyed by a missile that came out of nowhere from behind an asteroid. Then another, and another. "We are being harassed," Crix reported. "Small groups of human ships are attacking from hiding and retreating before we can respond." "Ignore them," Vex still ordered. "Focus on the main objective." But the attacks continued. Every time the Vexery moved forward, human ships would appear from behind rocks and moons, fire their weapons, and vanish before the fleet could target them. It was like fighting smoke dot, and then Captain Daniel Hayes broadcast his message. "Vexery Fleet, this is Captain Daniel Hayes of the United Earth Defense Force. You are approaching our home, our world, our families. I'm going to give you one warning, and only one. Turn back now, and you will live. Continue, and you will die." Vaxthil laughed out loud. Brave words from a man with a fleet of garbage ships. "Who is this captain?" Crix checked the records. "His ship is the USS Defiance, Supreme Commander. A small battlecruiser. Nothing compared to our capital ships. Open a channel. I want to speak to this human." The view screen changed to show a human face. Daniel Hayes looked calm, almost relaxed. Behind him, his bridge crew worked at their stations without fear. "Supreme Commander Vexthil," Daniel said. "I had hoped you would be smart enough to accept my offer." "Your offer?" "You threaten me with freighters and miners, and you think I will run?" Vexthil leaned forward, his compound eyes gleaming. "Let me tell you something, human. I have destroyed species far more advanced than yours. I have burned worlds and ended civilizations. Your little tricks do not impress me." "Maybe not," Daniel agreed. "But here's the thing about humans, Supreme Commander. We've been fighting for survival since we were chasing prey across savannas with pointy sticks. We've never been the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest. But we've always found a way to win. Pretty words. They will not save you." Daniel smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We'll see. You gave us 72 hours to prepare, Vets, though. That was your first mistake. And now you're flying straight into a system you don't understand, against an enemy you've never fought. That's your second. And what is my third?" Daniel leaned back in his chair. "You threatened our children, our parents, our homes. You made this personal. And humans, Supreme Commander, get very creative when you make things personal." The channel closed. Vex still stared at the blank screen for a long moment. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he did not recognize. It felt like doubt. The Battle of Seoul began at 6 in the morning, Universal Time. The Vexery fleet moved past the orbit of Mars, their sensors scanning for threats in every direction. They had already lost 15 scout ships to human ambush, and Supreme Commander Vexthil was growing frustrated. These humans fought like insects, biting and running, never standing still long enough to be crushed. "Where is their main fleet?" he demanded. "Why did they not face us?" "They appear to be withdrawing toward their homeworld, Supreme Commander," Crix reported. "Perhaps they are massing for a final defense. Then we will break that defense. All ships, maximum speed. I want to reach Earth before they can prepare any more surprises." The Vexery fleet surged forward. They did not see the mines until it was too late. The first explosion ripped through a cruiser on the left flank. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the Vexery formation was chaos as ships tried to avoid the hidden weapons scattered throughout their path. "Mines!" Crick shouted. "The humans have seeded the entire approach with mines. Clear them." Vexthil ordered. "Use point defense systems." But the mines were designed to be hard to detect. They were small, dark, and cold, nearly invisible against the blackness of space. And there were thousands of them while the Vexery fleet struggled with the minefield. Human ships attacked from every direction. Captain Daniel Hayes led the assault himself, the USS Defiance cutting through space like a sword. His ship was surrounded by dozens of others, civilian vessels with military weapons, each one piloted by someone who had everything to lose. "Target their engines," Daniel commanded. "Don't try to destroy them. Just slow them down. Keep them in the minefield as long as possible." The human ships dove in, fired their weapons, and pulled back before the Vexery could respond. It was exactly like the guerrilla tactics their ancestors had used for thousands of years, adapted for the three-dimensional battlefield of space. On the Conqueror's Pride, Vexdale watched his fleet take damage from every angle. His ships were still stronger than anything the humans had, but they were scattered, confused, and unable to use their superior firepower effectively. "This is humiliating," he roared. "We are the Vexery Empire. We do not fall for such simple tricks." "Supreme Commander," an officer called out, "we have cleared a path through the minefield. We can proceed." "Then proceed. All ships form up and advance." The Vexery fleet regrouped and pushed forward, leaving the burning wrecks of 30 ships behind them. They were hurt, but they were still powerful. 170 warships against a bunch of converted freighters. But the humans were not done as the Vexery approached Earth. They found the planet surrounded by a network of orbital platforms. These were not weapon platforms, or at least they did not look like weapon platforms. They looked like communication satellites and research stations. "What are those?" Vexthal demanded. "Unknown, Supreme Commander. Our sensors detect no weapon systems." "Then ignore them. Focus on the enemy fleet." The human ships had finally stopped running. They were gathered in a defensive formation around Earth, 3,000 vessels ready to make their last stand. It was a brave sight, if hopeless. "All ships, prepare to engage," Vexthal ordered. "This ends now." On Earth, Dr. Kevin Park stood in the control room of the Genesis Array facility. His hands were shaking as he watched the countdown timer. 15 seconds to activation, Monica Adams announced. "Is everyone clear of the blast zone?" "All civilian stations have been evacuated. The fleet has been warned." Kevin nodded. The Genesis Array was humanity's last hope, a weapon so experimental that it had never been tested at full power. If it worked, it would disable every electrical system in the Vexery fleet. If it failed, it might destroy half the satellites orbiting Earth. 10 seconds. On the bridge of the Defiance, Daniel Hayes watched the Vexery fleet approaching. They were less than a minute from weapons range. "Any word from the surface?" he asked. "The Genesis Array is almost ready," Amy Rodriguez replied. "We just need to hold them a little longer. Then we hold." "All ships, prepare to engage." 5 seconds. The Vexery opened fire. Beams of energy lashed across space, striking human ships and turning them into fireballs. The civilian vessels had never been designed for this kind of combat. They began to die by the dozens, their improvised armor no match for Vexery weapons. "We're losing ships fast," Amy shouted over the noise of explosions. "Hold the line." 2 seconds. Vexdale watched the human fleet burning and felt satisfaction wash over him. This was how it should be. The strong crushing the weak. The mighty teaching a lesson to those who dared to resist. "Target the planet," he commanded. "Prepare the planet crackers. 0 activation." Every orbital platform around Earth lit up at once. A wave of energy swept outward from the planet. Invisible to the naked eye, but devastating to electrical systems. It passed through the human fleet, which had been warned and was shielded. And then it hit the Vexery. On every Vexery ship, the lights went out. Screens died. Engines failed. Weapons went offline. Life support systems stuttered and fell silent. In the space of 3 seconds, 200 warships became 200 floating hulks, dark and dead. On the Conqueror's Pride, Vexthil found himself standing in absolute darkness. "Report," he shouted. "What happened? Report." But no one could answer. Every system was dead. Every backup had failed. The mighty Vexery fleet had been reduced to scrap metal in an instant. Emergency lighting flickered on, dim red lights that barely pushed back the darkness. Crick stumbled to a console that showed nothing but static. "Our systems are fried," he said, his voice shaking. "All of them. Engines, weapons, shields, communications, everything." "How is this possible?" "I do not know, Supreme Commander. Some kind of energy weapon. It targeted our electrical systems specifically." From somewhere outside the ship, a voice began to broadcast on an emergency channel. It was the human captain, Daniel Hayes. "Attention, Vexery fleet. Your weapons are disabled. Your engines are dead. Your shields are down. You are helpless." Vexthale grabbed a communication device and screamed into it. "This is not over, human. When we repair our systems, we will destroy you. We will burn your planet to ash." "With what?" Daniel's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Look outside your window, Supreme Commander." Vexthale moved to a viewport and looked out at the stars. The human fleet surrounded his ships. Thousands of vessels, weapons trained on the helpless Vexery. And they were not firing. They were waiting. "In human history," Daniel continued, "we have a concept called surrender. It means admitting that you've lost and asking for mercy. We also have something called the Geneva Conventions, which are rules for treating prisoners of war. You've probably never heard of either." "Vexery do not surrender," Vexthal hissed. "Then Vexery die. But I'm giving you a choice anyway, because that's what humans do. You have 5 minutes to signal your surrender. If you do not, we will open fire. And at this range, with your shields down, your ships will become tombs." The channel went silent. Vexthal stood in the darkness of his bridge, surrounded by the frightened faces of his crew. He thought about honor. He thought about pride. He thought about the glory of dying in battle. Then he thought about all the soldiers under his command. Young Vexery who had followed him into this fight. Who trusted him. Who would die for his pride. He reached for the communication device. "This is Supreme Commander Vexthal," he said, his voice hollow. "The Vexery fleet surrenders." Around Earth, cheers erupted on every human ship. The Battle of Sol was over. Humanity had won. The news of the Vexery defeat spread across the galaxy like a wave of fire. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had gathered to watch the destruction of humanity stared at their screens in disbelief. The mighty Vexery fleet, undefeated for 3 centuries, had been brought to its knees by a species that had only discovered faster than light. Travel 40 years ago, in the drinking establishment on Nexus Prime. The Drenari merchant Gorth dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. He was too busy watching the replay of the battle, seeing the Vexery ships going dark one by one. "Impossible," he whispered. "It is simply impossible." The Tholian trader beside him clicked his mandibles nervously. "Perhaps we should reconsider our trade agreements with Earth. Perhaps we should reconsider everything we thought we knew about humans." The Galactic Council convened an emergency session within hours. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every major species, all of them demanding answers. How had the humans done it? What weapon had they used? Were they a threat to the rest of the galaxy? High Counselor Zithan brought the chamber to order with a wave of his clawed hand. "We have all seen the footage," he said, his voice echoing through the massive room. "The Vexery fleet has been captured. Supreme Commander Vexthal is a prisoner of the humans. And we must now decide how to respond." Ambassador Kethris stepped forward. I have been in contact with the Earth government. They have assured me that they have no hostile intentions toward any species that does not threaten them. Easy to say now that they have demonstrated such power, Counselor Naram replied, his smoky form swirling with agitation. What guarantees do we have? The same guarantees we had before. The humans did not attack the Vexery. They defended themselves. There is a difference. The debate continued for hours. Some called for sanctions against Earth. Others demanded that the humans share their weapon technology. Still others suggested forming an alliance before the humans decided to use their power for conquest. In the end, High Counselor Zithan made the only decision that made sense. We will invite Earth to join the Galactic Council, he announced, with full membership and voting rights. That is a significant honor, someone objected. Earth is barely a Class II civilization. Zithan fixed the speaker with all 6 of his eyes. After what we witnessed, I believe our classification system may need to be revised. The humans are not what we thought they were. They never were. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for days. In every city, on every continent, people poured into the streets to cheer. They had faced extinction and survived. They had stood against the greatest military power in the region and won. For the first time in history, humanity knew with absolute certainty that they were not alone in the universe, and that they could hold their own. Admiral Jack Morrison stood at his window, watching fireworks explode over the mountains. His staff had wanted him to give a speech, to take credit for the victory. He had refused. The victory belonged to everyone. From the scientists who built the Genesis array to the pilots who flew converted freighters into battle. There was a knock at his door. Come in. Captain Daniel Hayes entered, looking tired but proud. Beside him was Commander Amy Rodriguez, still wearing her uniform from the battle. Sir, Daniel said, saluting. The Vexery prisoners have been secured. Supreme Commander Vexthale is asking to speak with you. Jack turned from the window. What does he want? He wants to understand, sir. He keeps asking how we did it. How we built a fleet in 3 days. How we developed a weapon that could disable his entire armada. He says it should not have been possible. Jack smiled slightly. What did you tell him? I told him that humans are very good at doing impossible things when we have no other choice. The Admiral nodded. That's a good answer. Maybe better than anything I could say. He walked to his desk and picked up a report. It detailed the losses from the battle. 247 ships destroyed. Over 1,000 dead. It was a heavy price, but so much lighter than it could have been. The Council has offered us membership, he said. Full voting rights. A seat at the table with the oldest species in the galaxy. Will we accept? Amy asked. The President is considering it. There are arguments on both sides. Some people think we should stay out of galactic politics. Others think we need allies for the future. What do you think, sir? Jack looked out the window again. The fireworks were fading, but the stars were coming out. Thousands of them, each one potentially home to another civilization. I think we just announced ourselves to the universe, he said quietly. We can't go back to being unknown. The question now is what kind of reputation we want to build. Do we want to be feared? Respected? Loved? All 3? Can we be all 3? I don't know. But I think we should try. In the small town of Cedar Falls, Iowa, Frank Cooper came home. His wife Maggie was waiting on the porch, just as she had been every day since he left. When she saw his car pull into the driveway, she started crying. When he stepped out, still wearing his flight suit, she ran to him and held on like she would never let go. You're home, she whispered into his chest. You're really home. I promised I would be. The grandchildren came running out of the house, screaming with joy. Frank knelt down to embrace them, feeling their small arms around his neck, smelling the shampoo in their hair. These were the things he had fought for. Not glory or honor or fame. Just this, his family. His own. Grandpa, were you scared? His youngest granddaughter asked, her eyes wide. Frank thought about the battle. The explosions, the screaming sirens, the friends he had lost. The moment when a Vexry beam had passed so close to his ship that he could feel the heat through the hull. Yes, he said honestly. I was very scared. But you fought anyway? Yes. Why? Frank looked at his granddaughter and his wife at the house where he had raised his children. He looked at the sky where somewhere beyond the blue, the stars waited. Because being brave does not mean you are not scared, he said. It means you fight anyway. For the people you love. For your home. For everything that matters. His granddaughter nodded seriously, as if she understood. Maybe she did. In the following months, the galaxy changed. The Vexry Empire, humiliated by their defeat, fell into civil war. The species they had conquered for centuries saw an opportunity and rose up. Within a year, the empire had collapsed, replaced by dozens of independent states. Earth accepted the seat on the Galactic Council. Their first vote was to propose new laws protecting young species from being bullied or attacked by older ones. The measure passed overwhelmingly. Trade missions from 100 worlds came to Earth, eager to establish relations with the species that had done the impossible. Humanity learned new technologies, new sciences, new ways of seeing the universe. In return, they shared something that no other species seemed to have. Hoped. The other species in the galaxy were old. They had seen too much, done too much, lost too much. They had become cautious, afraid of change, locked into patterns that had lasted for millennia. But humans were young. They still believed that tomorrow could be better than today. They still dreamed impossible dreams, and then made them real. At the Galactic Academy, where the greatest minds in the universe studied, there was a new saying among the students: never bet against humans. They are small, and short-lived, and fragile. Their technology is young, and their experience is limited. But threaten what they love, and they will move mountains to stop you. Tell them something is impossible, and they will find a way to do it anyway. And most importantly, they never, ever give up. The Battle of Seoul became legend. Stories were told of the fleet of freighters and miners that had faced down the mightiest armada in the region. Songs were sung about Admiral Morrison and Captain Hayes, about Dr. Park and General Volkov, about the millions of ordinary humans who had answered the call. Perhaps the best summary came from Supreme Commander Vexthal himself, years later, after he had been released and returned to his people in disgrace. A journalist asked him what he had learned from his defeat. Vexthal was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. I learned that the humans are not like us, he said. We fight because we want power. They fight because they want to protect. We attack because we are strong. They defend because they have no other choice. And that makes them more dangerous than any species I have ever faced. Why? Vexthal looked at the journalist with his compound eyes. Because you can defeat a warrior who fights for glory, but you can never defeat a species that fights for love. And somewhere in the small town of Cedar Falls, Iowa, an old pilot named Frank Cooper sat on his porch with his grandchildren, watching the stars come out, and smiled. The end.